This is Rick Scott, and he's a senator from Florida. And he explains that it doesn't really matter if the war is not going well for the United States because what's happening is that we're hurting China.
I think blocking the Strait of Hormuz is fine from my standpoint. If no oil ever goes to China again and their economy is destroyed, that would be a really wonderful day for me.
Once we understand this strategy, then it's very easy for us to understand how this war will progress over the next few years. And quite honestly, it may take 10 or 20 years. Okay, if this ceasefire does not work and war continues, then we can expect in round 2, the fighting will get much worse. Okay, so the Americans will start to target civilian infrastructure, including bridges, universities, desalination plants. In response, the Iranians can destroy a lot more energy infrastructure, okay? So what it's done now, it's basically closed off the Strait of Hormuz, but it can also close off the Red Sea. And they can also target pipelines of natural gas. Basically, it can take offline 1/3 of the world's energy supply. And this would, of course, cause an economic depression. Unfortunately, the national security strategy of the United States doesn't really care. They already have factored this in and they don't really care. The idea is to prioritize strategic interests. And what this basically means is that America has the world's greatest navy. And so all that they do is contain the world's choke points. And the world must bend to the will of America. So already what's happening is that this area, it's being closed off. But America has made moves to close off other areas as well. So America is exerting more control over the Panama Canal, okay? Basically, the Western Hemisphere, America can do whatever it wants in the Western Hemisphere. If you want to come here and trade, you have to go through us. China depends on a lot of resources from the Western Hemisphere, especially from South America. Brazil provides China with a lot of agricultural products. What Trump is saying is that, hey, in the future, you want to trade over here, China, you have to go through us, okay? So he's basically embargoing the Western Hemisphere from China. Over here is something called the Strait of Malacca. This is the most important choke point in the world. Because as you can see, the Middle East, if it is to access South Korea, China, and Japan, it has to go through the Strait of Malacca. But guess what, guys? Everything goes through the Strait of Malacca. This is important because the United States has signed a deal with Indonesia. So what we can expect is that America and Indonesia, their militaries will start to cooperate more and more. America is moving towards creating the first island chain, basically militarizing the first island chain in order to deter China. What we're also seeing is that Japan is now rapidly remilitarizing. This is all being encouraged by the United States as a deterrent to China. Again, America does not want to destroy China. It does not want to humiliate China. It wants to control China. The Chinese economy is still very strong and powerful. And America wants to make sure that the Chinese are buying more US dollars. What's going to happen is that the Chinese will have no choice but to buy from America. What America is also doing that's really important is that it's planning to take over Greenland. China and Russia cannot access the Western Hemisphere, okay, through the Arctic. You're also seizing control over the Arctic, okay? And there are lots of minerals and oil in the Arctic as well. The Strait of Gibraltar is also another strategic choke point, and America has signed a deal with Morocco to enhance more cooperation. What America is doing is, when they mean strategic interest, what they mean is exerting control over the world's choke points so that they can control global trade. The point is to get China to submit, not to destroy China. This is important because if you want to become a major power in the world, you need to trade effectively. So Russia has something called the North-South Corridor. It runs through Iran, okay? And that's why the United States is not going to ever stop attacking Iran. Because as long as Iran is at peace, Russia can trade with the world. Iran is being destroyed. There's too much war. This entire region is blocked off from both Russia and China. Russia has something called the Belt and Road Initiative. As you can see from a map, the center of the Belt and Road Initiative is, of course, Iran. If China wants to access Africa, Europe, the Middle East, it has to go through Iran. or it goes through the sea, the Strait of Malacca. But as I already said, the next step for America is to close off the Strait of Malacca to Chinese trade. Then where do you go? Well, then you go over to the Western Hemisphere, but that's American territory. You can trade with Russia, but it's not enough for your economy. Right now, China gets about 20% of its oil from Russia. Maybe Russia can provide 30% or 40%. But where are you going to get the other 50%, 60%, okay? If Iran is at war, then you're forced to buy from the United States. If you're forced to buy from the United States can set the price. It can set terms. And what the United States will say, you have to buy in US dollars, okay? And that saves their economy. This is not a hard idea to understand. This is exactly what it says in the US national security strategy. In many ways, you can make the argument that what's happening around the world right now, it's all an American policy of containing China, where in these flags are US military bases. As you can see, China is completely surrounded by US military bases in Japan, in Taiwan, Indonesia, and Malaysia. China is completely surrounded, okay? And this is it, the Strait of Malacca. This is a major choke point. And as you can see, it's not that hard for America to cut off that choke point. You can see how many US bases are here. And you can see a lot of this trade goes to the Middle East, but hey, the Middle East is at war right now, so no more oil from the Middle East. You might go to Angola, but this is very important. The Americans have recently announced a naval blockade in the Indian Ocean. So if you're China, yes, you could rely on Russia, but you see how little this is. It's too little trade between Russia and China. And you could build it up, but it's going to take you 10, 20 years' time. And what do you do for the next 10 years? You need food to eat. You need energy to fuel your factories. For the next 10 years, you have no choice but to work with the United States. And that's what Trump means by negotiating from a position of strength. Because you can set terms. You can force China to accept whatever terms you want. And quite honestly, if you just look at this map, there's very little that China can do about it. There's this war in the Middle East. There's also this war in Russia, which also absorbs a lot of Russian energy. So Russia doesn't have that much resources to spare to China anyway. But America does. So as long as the Western Hemisphere maintains a fortress, okay? Then the Western Hemisphere can continue to supply resources to the world at war. So this is what the war is about, guys. Creating conflict in the world so the United States can maintain its empire by maintaining its control over global trade. And the idea is America in the future will provide the world with energy, resources, weapons, and financing. Meaning we will actually lend you the money to buy this stuff as well. What do we call this stuff? US dollars, okay? This worked really well in the 1950s under something called the Marshall Plan. Same idea where America made products and it lent money to Europe to buy products from America. Same concept here where in the future, the world is at war, people are poor, but it's okay because America will lend you money to buy energy, resources, and weapons from America. America will be great again. Make America great again. Okay. But for this plan to fully work out, America needs three things, okay? The first thing that it needs to do is create a national draft because you need soldiers in order to maintain America's core interests, right? The goal is for Russia and Europe to constantly fight each other. The goal is for China and Japan to constantly fight each other. And you need Iran to constantly fight with the GCC and Israel, okay? So you have these three major conflicts around the world. But if there's any nation that's at peace, well, then you have to create conflicts, okay? Maybe in Africa. You also want to control the Western Hemisphere, so you need soldiers to go and conquer nations that defy you, all right? Second thing that you need is something called continuity of agenda. It means like, now that you have this plan in motion, you cannot have a change in government, okay? So Trump needs a third term, okay? And the third thing that you need is an AI surveillance state. Why? Because again, this plan can only work if the Americans don't rise up and revolt like they did in the Vietnam War.